Close your eyes and let your spirit journey eastward, across vast oceans and towering mountains, to a land where dragons soar through misty peaks and emperors rule from palaces of gold. The air carries the scent of jasmine and incense, the distant sound of temple bells echoing through valleys carved by ancient rivers. You are entering China, the Middle Kingdom, a civilization so old that when the pyramids of Egypt were being built, Chinese farmers were already cultivating rice along the Yellow River. This is a land of silk and jade, of terracotta warriors standing guard for eternity, of a wall so great it can be seen from space. A land where paper was invented, where gunpowder was discovered, where the compass first pointed travelers toward home. For over 5,000 years, Chinese civilization has flourished, rising and falling through dynasties, preserving wisdom in scrolls of silk and bamboo, creating art and philosophy that continue to shape our world today. Tonight, as you drift toward peaceful sleep, we will explore the wonders of ancient China, from the mythical Yellow Emperor to the splendor of the Tang Dynasty, from the teachings of Confucius to the mysteries of the Forbidden City. Let your breathing slow and your body relax as we journey through one of the oldest and most magnificent civilizations the world has ever known. Fact 1. Chinese civilization is one of the oldest continuous civilizations on Earth, with a recorded history spanning over 5,000 years. While other ancient civilizations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley also developed around the same time, what makes China remarkable is the continuity of its cultural traditions. The Chinese writing system, philosophical traditions, and cultural practices have evolved continuously from ancient times to the present day, creating an unbroken thread of civilization that connects modern China to its distant past. Fact 2. According to Chinese tradition, civilization began with the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, legendary rulers who taught humanity the essential arts of survival. The Yellow Emperor, or Huangdi, is considered the ancestor of all Chinese people and is credited with inventing numerous things including the calendar, mathematics, and traditional medicine. His wife Lezu is said to have discovered silk when a cocoon fell into her tea and began to unravel. While these figures are mythological, they represent Chinese beliefs about the divine origins of their civilization and its fundamental technologies. Fact 3. The Yellow River, known in Chinese as the Huanghe, is often called the cradle of Chinese civilization. This mighty river flows for over 3,000 miles through northern China, carrying yellow silt that gives it its distinctive color and makes the surrounding plains incredibly fertile. Ancient Chinese farmers settled along its banks, developing agriculture and eventually building the first Chinese cities. However, the Yellow River has also been called China's sorrow because of its devastating floods, which have killed millions of people throughout history. Fact 4. The Yangtze River, the longest river in Asia and the 3rd longest in the world, has been equally important to Chinese civilization. While the Yellow River nurtured northern Chinese culture, the Yangtze supported the development of southern Chinese civilization, particularly the cultivation of rice. The river's fertile delta region around modern Shanghai has been one of the most productive agricultural areas in the world for thousands of years. The contrast between the wheat-growing north and the rice-growing south has shaped Chinese cuisine, culture, and identity throughout history. Fact 5. The Xia Dynasty, traditionally dated from about 2100 to 1600 BCE, is considered the first Chinese dynasty, though its historical existence was long debated by scholars. According to ancient texts, the Xia was founded by Yu the Great, who earned his title by controlling the devastating floods of the Yellow River through an extensive system of irrigation channels and dikes. Recent archaeological discoveries at sites like Erlitou have provided evidence of a Bronze Age civilization that may correspond to the legendary Xia, lending credibility to ancient accounts. Fact 6. Let your mind drift now through the mists of ancient time, to an age when China was young and the world was full of mystery. Rivers carved their paths through primordial forests. Villages of thatched huts huddled beside the yellow waters. Shamans danced and prayed for rain, for good harvests, for protection from the spirits that lurked in every shadow. This was the dawn of Chinese civilization, when the patterns that would shape 5,000 years of history were first being woven. Fact 7. The Shang Dynasty, which ruled from approximately 1600 to 1046 BCE, is the earliest Chinese dynasty for which we have substantial archaeological evidence. The Shang developed the first Chinese writing system, a complex script inscribed on oracle bones, the shoulder blades of cattle and shells of turtles used for divination. These oracle bone inscriptions contain questions posed to ancestors and spirits about everything from weather to warfare, providing invaluable information about Shang society, beliefs, and language. Fact 8. Shang Dynasty bronze work represents one of the highest achievements of ancient metallurgy anywhere in the world. Shang artisans created ritual vessels of extraordinary size and complexity, decorated with intricate designs featuring the Taodai, a mysterious animal mask motif that remains enigmatic to modern scholars. These bronze vessels were used in ceremonies honoring ancestors and were buried in tombs with deceased royalty. The technical skill required to cast such large and detailed pieces demonstrates the Shang's sophisticated understanding of bronze technology. Fact 9. The discovery of oracle bones in the late 19th century revolutionized our understanding of ancient China. Farmers near the city of Anyang had been digging up inscribed bones for years, selling them to pharmacies as dragon bones to be ground into medicine. In 1899, scholars recognized the inscriptions as an ancient form of Chinese writing, launching archaeological investigations that revealed the Shang capital and thousands of inscribed bones. The oracle bone script is the direct ancestor of modern Chinese characters, the oldest writing system still in continuous use. Fact 10. The Zhou dynasty, which overthrew the Shang around 1046 BCE, would rule China for over 800 years, making it the longest-lasting dynasty in Chinese history. The Zhou justified their conquest through the concept of the mandate of heaven, the idea that heaven grants rulers the right to govern, but only as long as they rule justly. When a ruler becomes corrupt or incompetent, heaven withdraws its mandate, legitimizing rebellion. This concept would shape Chinese political thought for millennia, providing a framework for understanding dynastic change. Fact 11. The early Zhou period, known as the Western Zhou, was a time of relative stability and cultural flowering. The Zhou kings distributed land to relatives and allies, creating a feudal system where noble lords ruled their territories while owing allegiance to the king. This system worked well initially, but gradually weakened as the noble families grew more powerful and independent. Eventually, the Zhou kings became figureheads while real power rested with the feudal lords who nominally served them. Fact 12. The Eastern Zhou period, from 770 to 221 BCE, saw the breakdown of the feudal order and centuries of warfare among competing states. This era is divided into the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period, named after historical chronicles that recorded the events. Despite the political chaos, or perhaps because of it, this was one of the most creative periods in Chinese intellectual history, producing the philosophical schools that would shape Chinese thought forever. Fact 13. Confucius, known in Chinese as Kongqiu or Kongzi, lived during the spring and autumn period from approximately 551 to 479 BCE. He was a teacher and philosopher who emphasized moral cultivation, proper social relationships, and respect for tradition. Confucius believed that society could be harmonious if everyone fulfilled their proper role, whether as ruler or subject, parent or child, husband or wife. His teachings, recorded by his disciples in the Analects, became the foundation of Chinese education and ethics for over 2,000 years. Fact 14. The 5 key relationships in Confucian thought are ruler and subject, parent and child, husband and wife, elder and younger sibling, and friend and friend. Each relationship involves mutual obligations, with the superior party expected to show benevolence and care, while the inferior party shows respect and obedience. Only the relationship between friends is between equals. Confucius believed that if these relationships were properly maintained, beginning with the family and extending to the state, society would naturally become harmonious and well-ordered. Fact 15. Rest now in the gentle wisdom of Confucius, who taught that the path to a good life lies in self-cultivation and care for others. He said that the superior person is modest in speech, but exceeds in actions. He taught that learning without reflection is useless, but reflection without learning is dangerous. He believed that we should treat others as we wish to be treated ourselves, a golden rule that appears in cultures around the world. The Sage of China offers comfort across the centuries, reminding us that virtue is its own reward. Fact 16. Laozi, or Lao Tzu, is the legendary founder of Taoism, or Taoism, though little is known about his historical existence. According to tradition, he was an older contemporary of Confucius who worked as a keeper of archives at the Zhou court. The book attributed to him, the Tao Te Ching or Tao Te Ching, is one of the most translated works in world literature. In just 5,000 characters, it presents a philosophy of naturalness, simplicity, and harmony with the Tao, the way or path that underlies all reality. Fact 17. The Tao, or Tao, is the central concept of Taoist philosophy, representing the ultimate reality that cannot be named or described. The Tao Te Ching famously begins by stating that the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Taoism teaches that the wise person lives in harmony with the Tao by practicing wu-wei, or non-action, which does not mean doing nothing but rather acting naturally and spontaneously without forcing things. Like water, which is soft yet wears away stone, the Taoist achieves through yielding rather than striving. Fact 18. The concepts of yin and yang, representing complementary opposites that together form a harmonious whole, are central to Chinese thought. Yin represents darkness, cold, femininity, and passivity, while yang represents light, warmth, masculinity, and activity. Neither is good or bad in itself. Balance between them is essential for health and harmony. This concept appears throughout Chinese medicine, martial arts, feng shui, and countless other applications, expressing a worldview that sees the universe as a dynamic balance of opposing forces. Fact 19. Sun Tzu, who may have lived during the spring and autumn period around 500 BCE, is the legendary author of The Art of War, the most influential military treatise ever written. The Art of War teaches that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, that all warfare is based on deception, and that one should know the enemy and know oneself to win 100 battles without danger. The book has been studied not only by military commanders, but by business executives and athletes seeking competitive advantage. Fact 20. The Warring States period, from approximately 475 to 221 BCE, saw 7 major states compete for supremacy in increasingly brutal warfare. During this period, armies grew from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Cavalry replaced chariots as the dominant military force. Iron weapons replaced bronze. Crossbows allowed conscript armies to defeat trained warriors. The old aristocratic warfare gave way to total war, with states fighting for survival and millions dying in the conflicts. Fact 21. The state of Qin, located in the western frontier region, emerged victorious from the Warring States period through a combination of military prowess, strategic location, and ruthless governance. The Qin adopted legalist philosophy, which emphasized strict laws and harsh punishments to maintain order. Under the legalist minister Shang, Qin reformed its government, weakened the aristocracy, rewarded military success, and created a disciplined, efficient state that would eventually conquer all its rivals. Fact 22. In 221 BCE, the king of Qin completed the conquest of the remaining states and declared himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of Qin. He was the first ruler to unite all of China under a single government, creating the imperial system that would persist in various forms until 1912 CE. The name China itself derives from Qin, pronounced Qin. The first emperor's achievements and excesses would shape Chinese civilization profoundly, for good and ill. Fact 23. Let the grandeur of empire wash over you now, the vast sweep of history condensed into a single moment. A man of boundless ambition stands atop a mountain, surveying a land united under his rule for the first time. Behind him, armies that conquered 7 kingdoms. Before him, a civilization that will endure for millennia. The first emperor dreams of immortality, of a dynasty that will last 10,000 generations. He does not know that his empire will fall just 3 years after his death, but his unification of China will prove eternal. Fact 24. Qin Shi Huang standardized many aspects of Chinese civilization that had varied among the competing states. He created a unified system of weights and measures, standardized the width of cart axles so that vehicles could travel throughout the empire, and most importantly, standardized the Chinese writing system. While different regions continued to speak different dialects, they could all communicate through the same written characters, creating a unified literate culture that transcended linguistic differences. Fact 25. The first emperor connected existing defensive walls built by the northern states into a single great wall to protect against nomadic invasions from the steppes. This early wall was made primarily of rammed earth, and was far less impressive than the stone walls built during the Ming Dynasty over 1,000 years later. Nevertheless, it established the principle of a continuous northern defense that would define Chinese military strategy for centuries. The wall also served as a symbol of the boundary between Chinese civilization and the barbarian wilderness beyond. Fact 26. The Terracotta Army, discovered in 1974 by farmers digging a well near Xi'an, is one of the most spectacular archaeological finds in history. The first emperor commissioned an enormous mausoleum complex guarded by approximately 8,000 life-size terracotta soldiers, along with horses, chariots, and other figures. Each soldier has unique facial features, suggesting they may have been modeled on real individuals. The warriors were originally painted in bright colors and equipped with real weapons, standing ready to defend the emperor in the afterlife. Fact 27. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang itself has never been excavated. Ancient texts describe a vast underground palace containing rivers of mercury flowing through a model of the empire, with the ceiling decorated with jewels representing the stars. Modern surveys have detected unusually high levels of mercury in the soil around the mound, lending credibility to these accounts. Chinese authorities have declined to open the tomb, partly out of respect and partly due to concerns about preserving whatever lies within until conservation technology improves. Fact 28. The first emperor's quest for immortality led him to send expeditions in search of the legendary islands of the immortals, where herbs of eternal life supposedly grew. He consumed various elixirs prepared by court alchemists, many containing mercury and other toxic substances that likely hastened his death rather than preventing it. The pursuit of immortality would remain an important theme in Chinese culture, inspiring both religious practices and scientific experiments that eventually led to the discovery of gunpowder. Fact 29. The Qin dynasty collapsed just 3 years after the first emperor's death in 210 BCE, brought down by rebellion against its harsh rule. The empire fractured into civil war as generals and nobles competed for power. From this chaos emerged Liu Bang, a peasant who had become a rebel leader, who defeated his rivals and founded the Han Dynasty in 206 BC. The Han would rule China for over 4 centuries, establishing many of the institutions and cultural patterns that defined Chinese civilization. Fact 30. The Han Dynasty is so important to Chinese identity that the majority ethnic group in China today, over 90% of the population, call themselves Han Chinese. The dynasty is divided into the Western Han, which ruled from the capital at Chang'an, and the Eastern Han, which ruled from Luoyang after a brief interruption. Together they span from 206 BCE to 220 CE, a period of expansion, prosperity, and cultural achievement that Chinese people look back upon as a golden age. Fact 31. Breathe deeply now and let the peace of ancient China settle into your bones. The Han emperors ruled an empire of 60 million people connected by roads and canals, administered by scholars selected for their learning. Farmers tended their fields in the rhythm of the seasons. Merchants traveled the Silk Road, carrying silk westward and bringing back glass and gold. In quiet studies, philosophers debated the nature of reality, while astronomers mapped the movements of the stars. This was China at its classical peak, a civilization confident in its place at the center of the world. Fact 32. The Han Dynasty established the civil service examination system that would define Chinese government for 2,000 years. Instead of relying solely on aristocratic birth, the Han began selecting officials based on their knowledge of Confucian classics and their ability to write elegant essays. While the system was not fully developed until later dynasties, the principle that government service should be open to talented individuals regardless of birth was revolutionary. This meritocratic ideal made Chinese government among the most sophisticated in the ancient world. Fact 33. Emperor Wu of Han, who reigned from 141 to 87 BCE, was one of the most influential rulers in Chinese history. He expanded the empire dramatically, conquering territories in Central Asia, Korea, and Vietnam. He established Confucianism as the official state philosophy, creating a system of education based on the Confucian classics that would persist until the 20th century. He also launched the expeditions that opened the Silk Road, connecting China to the wider world. Fact 34. The Silk Road was not a single road, but a network of trade routes connecting China to the Mediterranean world through Central Asia. Chinese silk, the most prized luxury good of the ancient world, traveled westward to Rome, where it was worth its weight in gold. In return, China received horses, jade, gold, silver, and glass, along with new crops, technologies, and ideas. Buddhism traveled the Silk Road from India to China, transforming Chinese culture profoundly. Fact 35. Silk production was one of ancient China's most closely guarded secrets. According to legend, the Empress Lezhu discovered silk around 2700 BCE when she observed silkworms eating mulberry leaves and spinning cocoons. For millennia, China maintained a monopoly on silk production by forbidding the export of silkworms or mulberry seeds under penalty of death. Eventually, the secret escaped, supposedly smuggled out by monks who hid silkworm eggs in hollow bamboo staffs, but by then, Chinese silk had established a reputation for quality that persists today. Fact 36. Paper was invented in China during the Han Dynasty, traditionally credited to the court official Cai Luan around 105 CE, though archaeological evidence suggests earlier forms existed. Before paper, Chinese wrote on bamboo strips, wooden tablets, and silk, all of which were either heavy or expensive. Paper made from plant fibers was light, cheap, and could be produced in large quantities, democratizing literacy and enabling the spread of ideas throughout Chinese society and eventually the world. Fact 37. The compass was developed in China, initially for divination rather than navigation. Ancient Chinese discovered that certain iron ores, called lodestones, would align themselves with the Earth's magnetic field. By the Han Dynasty, they were using magnetized needles floating in water to determine directions. The compass was used first for feng shui, the practice of orienting buildings and graves for optimal flow of spiritual energy, before being adapted for navigation during the Shang Dynasty 1,000 years later. Fact 38. Gunpowder, the invention that would transform warfare and world history, was discovered by Chinese alchemists searching for the elixir of immortality. By mixing saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal, probably sometime during the Tang Dynasty around the 9th century CE, alchemists created an explosive substance that seemed more likely to cause death than prevent it. The Chinese initially used gunpowder for fireworks and signals before developing military applications including bombs, rockets, and eventually guns that would spread westward along the Silk Road. Fact 39. Chinese astronomical observations are among the oldest and most continuous in the world. Chinese astronomers recorded eclipses, comets, and supernovae thousands of years before their Western counterparts. They developed accurate calendars essential for agriculture and recorded celestial events that modern astronomers still use to study historical phenomena. The Chinese concept of the mandate of heaven made astronomy politically important, as unusual celestial events were interpreted as signs of heaven's pleasure or displeasure with the ruling dynasty. Fact 40. Rest now under the stars that Chinese astronomers mapped so long ago. The same constellations will overhead, though the Chinese gave them different names and different stories. Where Western astronomers saw Orion the hunter, Chinese astronomers saw Shen, a great warrior. Where the West saw the Big Dipper, China saw the Northern Ladle, part of a great celestial bureaucracy mirroring the earthly government. The stars connected heaven and earth, their patterns offering guidance to those wise enough to read them. Fact 41. The Han Dynasty eventually weakened due to a combination of factors including court intrigue, peasant rebellions, and the growing power of regional warlords. The dynasty officially ended in 220 CE, fragmenting into three competing kingdoms whose conflicts were immortalized in the historical novel romance of the Three Kingdoms. This period of division lasted nearly 4 centuries, with China only reunified under the Sui dynasty in 589 CE. Fact 42. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, written in the 14th century but set in the 3rd century, is one of the four great classical novels of Chinese literature. Its tales of heroic warriors, cunning strategists, and loyal brothers have shaped Chinese popular culture for centuries, comparable to the influence of Arthurian legend in the West. Characters like the noble Liu Bei, the wise Zhuge Liang, and the mighty Guan Yu have become cultural icons, worshipped in temples, and celebrated in countless adaptations. Fact 43. Guan Yu, a general who served Liu Bei during the Three Kingdoms period, was eventually deified as Guan Di, the god of war. His red face, long beard, and mighty blade called Green Dragon Crescent Moon are instantly recognizable throughout East Asia. Guan Yu represents loyalty, righteousness, and brotherhood, and his temples can be found throughout China and Chinese communities worldwide. Somewhat ironically, he is worshipped both by soldiers seeking victory and by merchants seeking wealth and protection. Fact 44. The Sui dynasty reunified China in 589 CE after centuries of division, but lasted only 2 emperors before being overthrown. Despite its brevity, the Sui accomplished remarkable feats, most notably beginning construction of the Grand Canal, a waterway connecting the Yellow River in the north to the Yangtze River in the south. This canal, extended and improved by later dynasties, allowed grain from the fertile south to be transported to the capitals in the north, creating an economic unity that complemented political unity. Fact 45. The Tang Dynasty, which followed the Sui in 618 CE, is often considered the greatest dynasty in Chinese history, a golden age of poetry, art, and international influence. The Tang capital of Chang'an was the largest city in the world, with perhaps 2 million inhabitants including merchants, scholars, and diplomats from across Asia. The Tang Empire extended from Korea to Central Asia, and Chinese culture spread throughout East Asia, establishing the Chinese characters, Confucian values, and Buddhist practices that still characterize the region today. Fact 46. Tang Dynasty poetry reached heights that Chinese literature would never surpass. The poets Li Bai and Du Fu, contemporaries who represent contrasting styles, are considered the greatest poets in Chinese history. Li Bai was known for his romantic, spontaneous verses, often celebrating wine and nature. Du Fu wrote more formal, carefully crafted poems that address social issues and personal suffering. Together, they represent the breadth of human experience expressed in the compressed, elusive language of classical Chinese poetry. Fact 47. Let yourself drift now on waves of ancient poetry, words crafted over 1,000 years ago that still speak to the human heart. Li Bai wrote of drinking alone beneath the moon, raising his cup to invite the moon and his shadow to join him, making 3 companions from one solitary man. Du Fu wrote of separation and longing, of a world torn by war, of growing old far from home. Their words have comforted countless readers across the centuries, reminding us that human emotions transcend time and language. Fact 48. Buddhism, which originated in India around the 5th century BCE, reached China via the Silk Road during the Han Dynasty and transformed Chinese culture profoundly. Buddhist concepts of karma, rebirth, and nirvana offered answers to questions that native Chinese philosophy did not address. Chinese Buddhism developed its own distinctive schools, including Chan Buddhism, which emphasized meditation and direct insight, and later spread to Japan as Zen. Buddhist monasteries became centers of learning and charity throughout China. Fact 49. The relationship between Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism in Chinese culture is complex and complementary rather than competitive. A common saying holds that Chinese are Confucian in office, Taoist in retirement, and Buddhist in the face of death. Confucianism provided ethics and political philosophy. Taoism offered a way to harmonize with nature and cultivate inner peace, and Buddhism addressed questions of suffering, death, and the afterlife. Most Chinese people drew on all three traditions according to their needs. Fact 50. The printing press was invented in China, with woodblock printing appearing during the Tang Dynasty and movable type invented by Shang during the Song Dynasty around 1040 CE, roughly 400 years before Gutenberg's press in Europe. However, the thousands of characters in the Chinese writing system made movable type less practical than it would be for alphabetic languages. Woodblock printing remained dominant in China, allowing the production of books, paper money, and playing cards that would eventually spread to Europe. Fact 51. The Song Dynasty, which ruled from 960 to 1279 CE, was one of the most innovative periods in Chinese history despite military weakness that eventually led to conquest by the Mongols. Song China saw advances in agriculture, commerce, technology, and culture that some historians consider a medieval industrial revolution. The population grew to over 100 million, the largest of any state in the world at that time. Cities thrived with commerce, and a prosperous merchant class challenged traditional social hierarchies. Fact 52. During the Song Dynasty, China developed the world's first paper money, called jiaozi, backed by the government and used throughout the empire. This innovation reflected the dynasty's commercial sophistication and the inadequacy of metal coins for large transactions in a booming economy. Paper money had advantages in convenience and allowed the government to manage the money supply, though excessive printing later caused inflation and contributed to the dynasty's decline. Fact 53. Song Dynasty porcelain achieved heights of technical perfection and artistic beauty that made Chinese ceramics famous throughout the world. The distinctive blue and white porcelain that Westerners associate with China was actually developed later, during the Yuan dynasty, when Mongol rulers imported cobalt from Persia. Song porcelain was more subtle, with delicate glazes in pale greens, whites, and blues that collectors still prize today. The word China, meaning fine porcelain, reflects the centuries-long dominance of Chinese ceramics in world markets. Fact 54. The bound feet of Chinese women, a practice that began during the Song Dynasty and continued until the 20th century, reflected the era's changing gender norms and aesthetic ideals. Young girls' feet were tightly wrapped to prevent normal growth, resulting in feet just 3 to 4 inches long considered ideal for beauty and social status. The practice was painful, crippling, and limited women's mobility, but was seen as essential for marriageability among elite families. Foot binding illustrates how cultural practices we now consider cruel can become normalized within societies. Fact 55. Rest now in the quiet of a Song Dynasty garden, where rocks and water create a miniature landscape for contemplation. The scholar officials who governed the empire retreated to such gardens to write poetry, practice calligraphy, and escape the pressures of court life. The rocks represented mountains, the ponds represented seas, and the careful arrangement of plants represented the harmony of nature. In such spaces, the boundary between art and nature dissolved, and the cultivated mind could achieve tranquility. Fact 56. The Mongol conquest of China, completed in 1279 CE under Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, brought China under foreign rule for the first time in its history. The Mongols established the Yuan dynasty, which ruled until 1368 CE. Though destructive in conquest, the Mongols maintained and expanded trade routes, bringing China into closer contact with the rest of the world. Marco Polo's famous account of his travels to China occurred during the Yuan dynasty. Fact 57. Kublai Khan, the first Yuan emperor, was a complex figure who embraced Chinese culture while maintaining Mongol identity. He moved the capital to Beijing, building a magnificent palace that would be rebuilt and expanded by later dynasties into the Forbidden City. He attempted to conquer Japan twice, but both invasion fleets were destroyed by typhoons that the Japanese called kamikaze, or divine winds. Despite his failures abroad, Kublai Khan presided over an empire that stretched from Korea to Poland. Fact 58. The Ming Dynasty, established in 1368 CE by Zhou Yuanzhang, a former peasant who rose to lead a rebellion against Mongol rule, restored native Chinese government after nearly a century of foreign domination. The Ming represented a deliberate return to Chinese traditions, rejecting Mongol practices and emphasizing Confucian values. Yet the Ming also continued certain Mongol innovations, including the capital at Beijing, and an autocratic style of government that concentrated power in the emperor. Fact 59. The Forbidden City in Beijing, constructed during the early Ming Dynasty from 1406 to 1420 CE, is the largest palace complex in the world. For nearly 500 years, it served as the home of Chinese emperors and the center of government. The complex contains nearly 1,000 buildings spread across 178 acres, all arranged according to strict principles of symmetry and feng shui. The yellow roof tiles, reserved exclusively for the emperor, covered buildings that no commoner was permitted to enter, hence the name Forbidden City. Fact 60. The Ming Dynasty is famous for its blue and white porcelain, which was exported throughout the world and copied by European manufacturers for centuries. The distinctive combination of white kaolin clay and cobalt blue decoration became synonymous with Chinese ceramics. Ming vases and plates were treasured in palaces from Istanbul to Amsterdam, and the style continues to be produced and imitated today. A single authentic Ming vase can sell at auction for millions of dollars. Fact 61. The Great Wall of China, as we know it today, was largely built during the Ming Dynasty, replacing earlier earth and wood constructions with the impressive stone fortifications that tourists visit today. The Ming faced constant threats from Mongol and other nomadic groups to the north and invested enormous resources in wall construction. The wall stretches approximately 13,000 miles in total, though much of this length consists of natural barriers and multiple layers of walls rather than a single continuous structure. Fact 62. Let yourself walk along the Great Wall now, in the quiet of imagination. The wall snakes across mountains and valleys as far as the eye can see, watchtowers rising at regular intervals against the pale sky. Guards once patrolled these ramparts, lighting signal fires to warn of approaching enemies. Now the wall is silent, a monument to human determination to create boundaries and barriers. Yet ultimately, no wall could keep out change. The empires that built these stones are gone, but the wall remains. Fact 63. Admiral Zheng He, a Muslim eunuch in the service of the Ming Emperor, led 7 great voyages from 1405 to 1433 CE that reached as far as East Africa. His fleet included ships far larger than anything Europeans would build for centuries, carrying tens of thousands of sailors, soldiers, and diplomats. These voyages established Chinese influence throughout Southeast Asia and beyond, collecting tribute from foreign rulers and spreading Chinese culture. Then, mysteriously, the voyages stopped and China turned inward. Fact 64. The decision to end Zheng He's voyages and destroy the records of his expeditions represents one of history's great what-ifs. Had China continued its maritime expansion, history might have unfolded very differently, with Chinese rather than European colonizers exploring and exploiting the world. The reasons for the withdrawal are debated, including cost, Confucian suspicion of merchants and military adventures, and palace politics. Whatever the cause, China retreated from the oceans just as Europe was beginning its age of exploration. Fact 65. Chinese medicine developed over thousands of years into a sophisticated system that remains widely practiced today alongside Western medicine. Traditional Chinese medicine is based on concepts including qi, the vital energy that flows through the body, and the balance of yin and yang. Treatments include herbal remedies using thousands of plant, animal, and mineral substances, acupuncture involving the insertion of thin needles at specific points, and practices like Tai Chi and Qigong for cultivating qi through movement and meditation. Fact 66. Acupuncture, perhaps the most internationally recognized aspect of Chinese medicine, is based on the theory that qi flows through the body along specific channels called meridians. Illness results when this flow is blocked or imbalanced. By inserting needles at points along the meridians, practitioners aim to restore proper flow and balance. While Western science struggles to explain acupuncture in its own terms, clinical studies have shown effectiveness for certain conditions, particularly pain management. Fact 67. Chinese cuisine, one of the world's great culinary traditions, reflects the country's diverse geography, climate, and cultures. The 8 major regional cuisines include the spicy dishes of Sichuan, the sweet flavors of Cantonese cooking, and the wheat-based foods of the north. Common principles include the balance of flavors, textures, and colors, the therapeutic properties of food, and the importance of freshness. The Chinese phrase meaning "have you eaten yet" is a common greeting, reflecting the central importance of food in Chinese culture. Fact 68. Tea has been cultivated in China for over 2,000 years and has become inseparable from Chinese culture. According to legend, tea was discovered by the mythical Emperor Shang when leaves from a tea plant fell into his boiling water. Tea drinking evolved from a medicinal practice to a sophisticated art form, with elaborate rituals, specialized equipment, and careful cultivation of numerous varieties. Tea spread from China to Japan, where it developed into the tea ceremony, and eventually to Europe, where it transformed social customs and global trade. Fact 69. Rest now with a cup of tea warming your hands, its fragrance rising in curling steam. The Chinese art of tea emphasizes presence, attention, and appreciation of simple pleasures. The same leaves brewed multiple times yield different flavors, teaching patience and awareness. Tea connects us to nature, to tradition, to the farmers who cultivated the plants and the artisans who crafted the cups. In the quiet ritual of preparing and drinking tea, the busy mind can find peace. Fact 70. The Tang Dynasty, established in 1644 CE by the Manchu people from northeast of the Great Wall, was the last imperial dynasty of China. Like the Mongols before them, the Manchu were foreign conquerors who adopted Chinese culture while maintaining distinct practices, including the requirement that Chinese men wear their hair in a queue, a shaved forehead with a long braid in back. The Qing expanded Chinese territory to its greatest extent, incorporating Tibet, Mongolia, and Xinjiang, but eventually succumbed to internal decay and foreign pressure. Fact 71. The Qing emperors Kangxi, Yongzheng, and Qianlong, who reigned consecutively from 1661 to 1799 CE, oversaw one of the most prosperous periods in Chinese history. Kangxi was a scholar warrior who consolidated Qing rule, sponsored great scholarly projects, and personally led military campaigns. Qianlong, his grandson, was a lavish patron of the arts whose reign saw both cultural flowering and the beginnings of decline. During their reigns, China was the wealthiest and most populous nation on earth. Fact 72. Chinese gardens, developed over centuries by scholars and emperors, represent a distinct aesthetic philosophy quite different from Western garden traditions. Where European gardens often impose geometric order on nature, Chinese gardens aim to capture the essence of natural landscapes in miniature, with carefully placed rocks representing mountains, ponds representing seas, and winding paths that reveal new views at every turn. The most famous Chinese gardens, in cities like Suzhou and Beijing, remain treasured for their beauty and philosophical depth. Fact 73. Chinese calligraphy is considered the highest art form in traditional Chinese culture, above painting, poetry, and music. The thousands of characters in the Chinese writing system, each consisting of specific strokes that must be written in a particular order, offer endless opportunity for artistic expression within a disciplined framework. A skilled calligrapher can convey not just meaning but personality, mood, and aesthetic vision through the flow of ink on paper. Emperors, scholars, and artists all aspired to beautiful calligraphy. Fact 74. The four treasures of the study, essential tools for the Chinese scholar, were the brush, the ink, the inkstone, and the paper. These simple implements, refined over centuries, enabled the creation of paintings, calligraphy, and written works that defined Chinese culture. The brush, made of animal hair bound to a bamboo handle, allows for expressive variation in line thickness. The ink, made from soot mixed with glue and shaped into sticks, is ground with water on the inkstone before use. The paper, invented in China, accepts ink with varying degrees of absorption depending on its preparation. Fact 75. Let your mind rest now in a scholar's study, where quiet concentration produces works that will outlast empires. The brush moves across paper, leaving trails of black ink that form characters, poems, paintings. Outside, the world turns with its wars and famines, its empires rising and falling. Inside, a scholar pursues truth and beauty in the ancient way, adding one more voice to a conversation that has continued for millennia. This is the Chinese ideal, cultivation of the self through study and art. Fact 76. Chinese painting developed distinctive styles and subjects quite different from Western artistic traditions. Landscape painting, called shanshui meaning mountain water, aimed not to reproduce appearances, but to capture the essence and spirit of nature. Human figures are often tiny in these vast landscapes, suggesting the proper humble relationship between humanity and nature. Bird and flower painting and figure painting were also important genres, each with its own techniques and aesthetic principles. Fact 77. The Chinese dragon is a benevolent creature quite different from the fearsome dragons of European mythology. Chinese dragons are associated with water, rainfall, and imperial power, bringing life-giving rain rather than destruction. The dragon was the symbol of the emperor, whose throne was called the Dragon Throne, and whose robes were decorated with dragon motifs. Dragons appear throughout Chinese art and architecture, especially in temples and palaces, representing power, strength, and good fortune. Fact 78. The phoenix, called Fenghuang in Chinese, represents the empress, as the dragon represents the emperor. This mythical bird symbolizes grace, virtue, and good fortune, appearing only in times of peace and prosperity. Together, the dragon and phoenix represent the union of male and female, emperor and empress, yang and yin. Their images often appear together in decorations for weddings and other celebrations, symbolizing harmony and marital happiness. Fact 79. The Great Buddha at Leshan, carved into a cliff face in Sichuan province during the Tang Dynasty, is the largest stone Buddha statue in the world. The seated figure stands over 230 feet tall, with shoulders that span 92 feet. Construction took 90 years, from 713 to 803 CE. The statue was built at the confluence of 3 rivers, where swift currents caused frequent accidents, in hopes that Buddha's presence would calm the waters. Local legend claims that the rocks carved from the cliff did indeed slow the currents. Fact 80. Chinese martial arts, known as kung fu or wushu, developed over centuries in connection with military training, self-defense, health cultivation, and spiritual practice. Hundreds of distinct styles exist, some emphasizing hard, powerful movements and others soft, flowing techniques. The Shaolin Temple, associated with Chan Buddhism, is famous for its martial arts tradition, supposedly begun by the Indian monk Bodhidharma. Martial arts films from China and Hong Kong have made these traditions famous worldwide. Fact 81. The legend of the Monkey King, from the 16th century novel Journey to the West, is one of China's most beloved stories. The tale follows the Tang Dynasty monk Xuanzang on a pilgrimage to India to retrieve Buddhist scriptures, accompanied by the mischievous and powerful son Wukong, the Monkey King, along with Zhou Beiji, a pig demon, and Sha Wujing, a river monster. The story combines adventure, humor, Buddhist teachings, and social satire, remaining popular in countless adaptations including films, television series, and video games. Fact 82. Drift now into dreams of adventure, of the Monkey King somersaulting across clouds, wielding his magic staff that can shrink to the size of a needle or grow to touch the sky. Sun Wukong rebelled against heaven itself, causing chaos in the celestial palace before being trapped under a mountain by the Buddha. Only after 500 years was he released to accompany the monk on his journey west, learning through adventures and trials to transform his wild nature into enlightened compassion. Fact 83. The opium trade and opium wars of the 19th century represented a profound humiliation for China and the beginning of what Chinese call the century of humiliation. British merchants, seeking to balance their trade deficit with China, illegally imported opium from India, causing widespread addiction. When Chinese officials attempted to stop the trade, Britain launched military attacks that China could not resist. The resulting treaties forced China to open ports to foreign trade, cede Hong Kong to Britain, and accept other humiliating conditions. Fact 84. The Taiping Rebellion, from 1850 to 1864, was one of the deadliest conflicts in human history, with estimated deaths ranging from 20 to 30 million people. The rebellion was led by Hong Xiuquan, who believed he was the younger brother of Jesus Christ, sent to establish a heavenly kingdom on earth. At its height, the Taiping controlled much of southern China. The rebellion was eventually suppressed, but it severely weakened the Qing dynasty and demonstrated the depth of social discontent in 19th century China. Fact 85. The Boxer Rebellion of 1900 was an anti-foreign, anti-Christian uprising that the Qing court initially supported before disavowing. The Boxers, so called because of their martial arts practices, believed that spiritual rituals made them invulnerable to bullets. They attacked foreign nationals and Chinese Christians, besieging the legation quarter in Beijing. An international force of 8 nations invaded to lift the siege, imposing further humiliating conditions on China and further weakening the Qing dynasty. Fact 86. The Qing dynasty fell in 1911 through the Xinhai Revolution, ending over 2,000 years of imperial rule in China. The Republic of China was established, but the new government struggled to maintain control over the vast country. Decades of civil war, warlord rule, Japanese invasion, and ideological conflict followed before the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949 under the Communist Party led by Mao Zedong. This tumultuous modern history has shaped China's current rise as a global power. Fact 87. Let the weight of history settle gently around you now. Dynasties have risen and fallen like waves on a shore, yet China endures. The civilization that began with farmers along the Yellow River has grown into a nation of over 1 billion people, still writing in characters developed 3,000 years ago, still studying Confucius, still drinking tea, and celebrating the dragon. The past lives in the present, shaping how modern Chinese understand themselves and their place in the world. Fact 88. Chinese New Year, also called Spring Festival, is the most important holiday in Chinese culture, marking the beginning of the Lunar New Year. Celebrations include family reunions, special foods, red decorations symbolizing good fortune, fireworks to drive away evil spirits, and gifts of money in red envelopes. Each year is associated with one of 12 zodiac animals in a repeating cycle. The festival reflects values of family, renewal, and hope that have characterized Chinese culture for millennia. Fact 89. The Mid-Autumn Festival, celebrated on the 15th day of the 8th lunar month when the moon is fullest, is another major Chinese holiday. Families gather to eat mooncakes, round pastries symbolizing unity and completeness, and to admire the full moon. The festival is associated with the legend of Chang'e, a woman who ascended to the moon and became the moon goddess. Like Chinese New Year, the Mid-Autumn Festival emphasizes family reunion and the beauty of the natural world. Fact 90. Chinese concepts of family extend beyond the immediate household to include extended family, ancestors, and descendants yet unborn. Ancestor veneration, the practice of honoring and remembering deceased family members, has been central to Chinese culture since ancient times. Families maintain altars for ancestors, offer food and incense, and visit graves to pay respects. This continuity between generations, past, present, and future, gives individual lives meaning within a larger family narrative spanning centuries. Fact 91. The concept of filial piety, or Shao, is perhaps the most fundamental value in Confucian ethics. Children are expected to respect, obey, and care for their parents, both in life and after death. This obligation extends to honoring ancestors and producing descendants to continue the family line. Filial piety is not merely a family virtue but the foundation of social order, for Confucius taught that one who is filial and respectful toward elders will rarely be inclined to disturb the peace. Fact 92. Chinese philosophy emphasizes harmony, a concept that applies to relations between individuals, between humanity and nature, and within the cosmos as a whole. Rather than seeking to dominate or transform nature, traditional Chinese thought values living in accordance with natural patterns. This attitude appears in medicine, which seeks to restore balance rather than conquer disease, in art, which captures natural essences rather than imposing human designs, and in ethics, which promotes social harmony through proper relationships. Fact 93. Rest now in the harmony that Chinese sages sought through centuries of reflection. Heaven, earth, and humanity form a unity, interconnected and interdependent. The patterns of the stars mirror the patterns of government. The health of the emperor reflects the health of the realm. The cultivated person aligns with cosmic principles, finding peace not through striving but through acceptance, not through domination but through cooperation. In this ancient wisdom, modern minds may still find comfort. Fact 94. Chinese contributions to world civilization include not only inventions like paper, printing, gunpowder, and the compass, but also ideas, arts, and practices that continue to influence the world. Chinese philosophy has attracted Western students from Leibniz to modern seekers. Chinese medicine offers alternative approaches to health. Chinese cuisine has spread to every corner of the globe. Chinese art and design influence architecture and interiors worldwide. The civilization that once saw itself as the center of the world now engages with the world in new ways. Fact 95. The 21st century has seen China rise to become the world's second-largest economy and a major global power. Hundreds of millions of Chinese have risen from poverty, and Chinese cities have transformed into modern metropolises that rival any in the world. Yet this rapid modernization has also raised questions about the preservation of traditional culture, the environment, and China's role in the world. China's future will be shaped by how it navigates these challenges while drawing on its deep cultural heritage. Fact 96. The Chinese language, with its thousands of characters each representing meaning rather than sound, has shaped Chinese thought in distinctive ways. The same characters can be read in different dialects with different pronunciations, allowing written communication across linguistic boundaries. Classical Chinese, the literary language used for formal writing until the 20th century, is extremely compressed, with maximum meaning conveyed in minimum characters. This compression encourages a style of thought that values suggestion over explicit statement, wisdom over information. Fact 97. Chinese poetry, constrained by tone patterns and character counts, achieves effects impossible to fully translate into other languages. A 4-line poem of just 20 characters can evoke complex emotions and philosophical depths. The ambiguity inherent in classical Chinese, where words have no fixed grammatical function, allows multiple simultaneous readings that enrich meaning. Translation can convey the sense, but not the full experience of Chinese poetry, which rewards a lifetime of study. Fact 98. Let peace settle over you now like silk, light and warm and beautiful. You have journeyed through 5,000 years of Chinese history, from the mythical Yellow Emperor to the modern age. You have met philosophers and warriors, poets and emperors, inventors who changed the world, and ordinary people who carried their civilization forward through the generations. This is only a glimpse of China's vast and complex story, but perhaps it has opened a door through which you may explore further. Fact 99. Sleep now, dreamer, carried on currents of history to shores of peace. China sleeps too, or that part of China which is dreaming, which is remembering, which is preserving the past for the future. The Great Wall stretches across mountains beneath the stars. The Forbidden City stands silent in the Beijing night. The Yellow River flows as it has for millennia, carrying silt to the sea. And somewhere, a scholar is reading an ancient text, a calligrapher is practicing characters, a grandmother is telling stories to children. China endures, and in its endurance, something of humanity endures. Rest well, and may your dreams be touched by ancient wisdom and lasting peace. Close your eyes. The dragon curls around your sleep, protective and benevolent. The phoenix sings dawn songs in the garden of your dreams. The sages nod in approval, recognizing in you a seeker of knowledge, a lover of wisdom. You are welcome in China, welcome in the Middle Kingdom at the center of all things. Rest now. The journey continues when you wake, but for now, there is only peace, only silence, only the gentle rhythm of breath and the eternal flow of the Tao.